Welcome to the Arnold Arboretum's Tree Mob. I'm Pam Thompson, Manager of Adult Education. We are recording this session, and Steve Schneider, Director of Operations and Public Programs, is our videographer. Today's topic is living mulches, and our speaker today is Jeffrey Scott Williams. He is an Arnold Arboretum horticultural technologist, and Scott earned a BS in forestry at West Virginia University in 2006, a master's in science in industrial and labor relations at Widener University in 2010, and he's currently taking classes through the Harvard Extension School. He's an International Society of Arboriculture certified arborist and a certified professional horticulturist. Scott grew up in West Philadelphia, embedded in horticulture, where he was influenced by his grandfather and assisted his mother, who was the plant buyer for Frank Steyer Nurseries. Prior to coming to the Arnold Arboretum in 2018, Scott worked at Morris Arboretum of the University of Pennsylvania and at Gavis Arboretum at Purdue Northwest, among other places. And one of Scott's Arboretum responsibilities is caring for the Bradley Rosaceous Collection of plants, and the management of this collection's planting beds is the focus of Scott's talk today. So welcome, Scott, and thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Pam. So welcome to the Bradley Rose Collection at the Arnold Arboretum. Today we're going to talk about living mulches, which is one of my passions. And I'm going to try and explain the concept a little bit. Then we're going to look at some examples, and then I'll try and answer some questions if anyone has any. So living mulch, most gardeners know how useful traditional mulch is. There is some in the beds here in the rose garden. It's just super useful for suppressing weeds, limiting irrigation needs, chipmunk, controlling, kind of regulating the soil temperature, reducing the evaporation rate. And living mulches kind of serve a similar, definitely have the similar aim, but they have a whole nother host of benefits, including attracting beneficial insects, attracting pollinators, kind of improving the soil health, and also just in terms of conservation over the long term. It's just a soil stabilizer. It reduces erosion, and to me it's also just very aesthetically pleasing. So I don't want to say one's better than the other, but because there's definitely a function for traditional bark mulch or wood chip mulch, whatever you use. I just want people to know about the option of living mulch, because I don't think many do. And it's super cool. It's very environmentally friendly, can be cheap, very sustainable. And it also, yeah, it's, there's a wide range of options. It's not limited, you know, living mulches started as more of a cover crop for farmers to interplant their cash crop in, things like crimson clover, partridge pea. But it's not just that, and it's not just like perennial ground covers. It can be low growing woody shrubs, or it could be a rambling rose that you want to let travel through your garden. So yeah, let's look at some that I put in last year. And also I want everyone to know too that most of the plants that I used came in landscape plugs. So landscape plugs are like this is the largest size of them. They're 1.5 inch cube and a 4-inch deep little pot. They're about $1.50 per plant. So a flat of 50 is about 75 bucks. And they cover a lot of ground. So the first plant I want to talk about is that came in a landscape plug is a hybrid strawberry, Fragaria X lipstick, and that's this little plant. So these came in little plugs last year. This is probably about 20 plugs. Maybe not even 20 plugs because I split a flat of 50 in 3. So these were little plugs last year. These flower from early March until late November. So spring till the frost kills them. They send runners out, which is really good. So a runner is where the stem has a bud and that bud feels the soil and then it'll root in there instead of putting out a flower or a leaf, and then kind of a new plant will grow there and it'll continue to run. So for me, this is like a powerhouse living mulch because as you can see, there's very little weeds in between here and it flowers forever. It's gonna have like a really nice ornamental berry that's not so good for humans to eat, but it attracts a lot of wildlife. And for me, this is gonna fill in all these gaps in here. And I'd much rather have to take out these little runners that come than have to use Roundup in here or have to constantly weed for like Cynantium or pokeweed. So Fragaria X is a hybrid, Fragaria lipstick, super plant, also a native. The next ones I want to talk about are, it's a very little known genus in the horticulture circle called Sanguisorba, rose family plant, just like the strawberry. This is, so the common name is Burnet for Sanguisorba. This is chocolate tip. This gets a nice chocolate colored kind of bottleneck flower. This too, these were plugs last year. These will kind of clump out. They won't send runners, but they'll clump. So they'll fill in the gaps here. Next, this is another Sanguisorba, probably my favorite Sanguisorba. It's Sanguisorba hakusanensis. It's the Korean Sanguisorba, and this variety is called lilac squirrel. It gets these insane pink squirrel tail flowers. So this started flowering last week, and this also will flower now till frost. So it's a rebloomer. You just deadhead it. It'll send up new flower buds. Same with the other Sanguisorba. It doesn't send runners out, but it'll keep clumping. The maintenance with these, after maybe like 5 years, you need to, they'll donut, so they'll die in the center and they'll grow out. So you need to just divide it up. But you also get like 4 plants out of 1 plant in about 4 or 5 years. So this is another powerhouse living mulch. So the next living mulch I want to show, and I like this one a lot because it just shows that, I guess traditionally living mulches have been thought of as like a ground cover, a low growing kind of sprawling perennial or annual. And I mean, most of them are that, but they can be whatever you want them to be, as long as you know what habit they grow in. So this is another rose family, maybe my favorite native. It is Filipendula Rubra. Common name is Queen of the Prairie. This also will just, these were tiny little, the largest size plugs last year, and now they're, I don't know, 3.5 feet tall. They'll take up this whole area. If I want to make more of them, I can divide them. Super easy plant, amazing foliage, kind of like a Japanese maple, like a cut leaf maple. And then these flowers, they look small now, but it becomes like a cotton candy puff in about late June, early July. Native pollinator powerhouse. Yeah, just very easy plant, very easy to propagate and get more of. Yeah, maybe my all-time favorite native. So next, could we go to the other bed?
You bet.
Cool.
And looks like we have a question about nutrients. Do we want to field that now?
Yep. So as you're planting these living mulches, are they robbing the surrounding plants of nutrients?
Are they? No, I mean, they could if you chose the wrong plant, but they're not robbing it any more than the traditional mulch would be robbing the soil of nitrogen. If anything, these are giving more nutrients because all these herbaceous perennials, about 30% of the sugar they're generating from photosynthesis is going back in the ground, and it's just building up the soil profile, especially the community of microbes in there that's going to feed off the sugars of the roots. So if anything, these plants are going to make this Yoshino cherry stronger, especially these amylanchers too.
Okay, great. We are just changing location to another garden bed right now.
I just want to show, the sand cherry, also the rubus, and then the Alcamilla.
Gotcha.
Good? Okay. A couple more plants. Lady's mantle, Alcamilla mollis, another rose family plant, herbaceous perennial. As you can see, there's a theme. For me, I tried to make, since it's the rose collection, I tried to use as many rose family perennials as I could for living mulches. So this is probably the all-time best weed smothering perennial plant. As you can see, these were plugs last year. This is one plant now, and the foliage is huge. It comes out early in spring. It also, these leaves repel water, so all the water droplets go off these, and you can even see them still on here now from last night's rain. And they go right into the soil. Super helpful for holding the moisture in there. These flowers, traditionally they flower once, but if you deadhead these, they'll actually reflower. And actually, if you cut these back in late July, they'll send a new flush of foliage up, which is usually a little bigger than the first one. And they already have, I don't know if you can see, but they already have pretty large foliage. But the second flush, if you do want to cut them back, might be double that, which is very cool. What's cool about this plant too, unlike the other ones that spread kind of, they're clump forming, this one seeds around. So like this gap where I'm standing between the rubus and the Alcamilla, this will just seed in there. This will probably also seed in the cobblestones, which is why it's one of the best, probably most unpretentious, like weed smothering garden plants ever. Yeah, just one of my all-time favorites. Super tolerant of dry, part shade. It can go dry, part shade to full sun and wet. So how could you not love a non-finicky plant? The other thing I want to talk about is that, like I said earlier, it's not, I don't want people to think that using living mulches is like kind of concentrated to annuals or perennials. Like woody specimens can also be really cool living mulches. And this is a Prunus Pumula. This is a sand cherry. So this one, I created to do that. Otherwise, it would probably be into the apple. But same with this. This started as a maybe 2 little gallon plants, and same with the Fragaria, it will layer itself in. But since it's woody, it does it slow, so it's not going to go crazy. You just need to, you can kind of be artistic and make it whatever shape you want, which is really cool. Super low maintenance, has really nice white flowers, and then gets like a very nice fall foliage. So yeah, it's not just, it doesn't have to be just perennials. It can be something woody too. Even like we have trellises in the rose garden. Like I'm looking at a crimson, yes, could you just point that out? So the rose growing on the trellis right here, that's a Crimsonrambler. Rambling rose, that might be a 2-year-old plant. I put one of those in the beds in the BRC, just in the bed, because I want it to kind of do what vinca or ivy does. And yeah, so that's living mulch as well. And same with that, I just can shape it whichever way I want. Very easy maintenance. That's Crimsonrambler is a super disease resistant rose, and will deadhead. If you deadhead it, it will keep blooming. Yeah, super plant. And yeah, it just will, that might be like grow 4 feet in a growing season. So that might reach the top of the arch by the end of this year, which would be awesome. And then one of the beds doing the same thing. So I am very happy about that. The other thing I want to show you is this raspberry. Same thing with the sand cherry. I try and use this to cover up all the gaps. So I cut this back every year. I probably cut this back maybe 3 weeks ago, cut it back all the way. And then it is already filling in. So I cut it back to maybe a basketball sized root crown where it is right here. And in whatever 2.5 weeks, it's already grown this big. It's already sending out its runners. Yeah, attracts a lot of wildlife. It has nice flowers, white flowers, and then it'll get berries on it. Yeah, super cool plant. Another form of living mulch. Yeah, and the other thing I want to talk about is I also manage the beach collection. So I encourage you to come here, walk through the rose garden. These aren't the only beds that have living mulch in them. Some other things in here, like I use hellebores as living mulch. I use epimedium, a Runkus, the native Sanguisorba canadensis, GM triflorum, and GM fragaroides. So they all have labels on them. You can walk the rose garden and see. And then also in the beach collection, I use partridge peas. So that's a native annual, a nitrogen fixing legume plant. Also a pollinator powerhouse. If you come here in August, it will be like a symphony of bees in there. And it's amazing. Very low maintenance. The other things that are in there are New England aster. So that's Symphotrichum novae anglae. There's Penstemon digitalis, Solidago, and mountain mint. So, and all those, if you do go to the beach collection, all those that's 2-year-old plug plants. So just to see how big they are now, because some of them are taller than me and I'm like 5'8". So very cool. So that's it. I will love to take questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I do have questions. People are asking about shade and what do you recommend for shade for living mulches?
Okay. Am I good to go now? So just off.
Yes, you are.
Shade. So the back corner of the rose garden, it's dry shade. I use Hellebore fotitis, and then I use Hellebore Molly's White. Both got them both in plugs. They're probably as big as these Alcamilla this year. The other thing I use for dry shade is Epimedium. The one I have in here is Lilithy, clump forming, Epimedium, purple flowers. In terms of like a moist shade, you could use Geum fragaroides, Mertensia virginica, which is Virginia bluebells. I'll do the common names too, I guess, so it's helpful. So Mertensia virginica is Virginia bluebells. Solidago acacia, that's the blue stem goldenrod. That's excellent for moist shade or dry shade. Then there's the blue wood aster, which is Symphotrichum cordiifolia, and the white wood aster, both moist or dry shade.
Somebody wanted to know about a ground cover that might beat out bishop's weed, goutweed.
Ground cover that would be out goutweed. Fragaria lipstick.
What?
The Fragaria lipstick.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do that as long as it's not dry shade. The strawberry will take some shade. I don't know where it is, but it would definitely beat that out. So would the Geum fragaroides. That was the picture I sent you that you used as the tree mob photograph. It has yellow, the Appalachian barren strawberry.
Yeah. So Geum fragaroides.
Yeah.
Do you ever use Astilbe chinensis, Pumula, or Chrysogonum?
We use wild collected Astilbe,
Okay.
but we do use a Runkus. But the Astilbe we use is the giant Astilbe. I think it is Astilbe chinensis, but it's straight species. It's not a variety. I think Steve might have wild collected it.
Okay. Here's a question. I think some people might have this issue where they've got an old tree that they or someone else has been adding mulch to over the years, and the mulch has moved up the trunk inches or so, and this person wants to remove that and use vinca instead.
Yeah.
And can you just counsel a little bit on how you might do that without hurting the tree and improving its life?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing, that's one of the drawbacks to traditional mulch is that it can hurt the plant if you put it on too thick, because then the roots will girdle, which is probably what's happening there. So just remove the old mulch, and then I would plant the vinca from a foot out from the flare to the drip line and try and have that be the tree ring of living mulch. And you can also get vinca in the landscape plugs, and they're probably pretty cheap. So if you got one flat of 50 vinca, I don't know how big the tree is. If it's an older tree, you probably would need 3 to 4 flats, but that would last you forever. So it would be good.
All right. And then someone was asking, well, what about these ground covers that tend to spread? And I think the answer is you just have to manage them and weed them out.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'd rather weed out something that's building a healthy community of plants around it, than something like an invasive. Like if I don't have these in here, it's going to be cynantium. It's going to be black swallowwort, or or it's going to be the garlic mustard in the early spring, and then it's going to be probably jewelweed. So I'd rather have to manage the sprawling strawberry than Cynantium growing through the quince. To me, it's pretty easy concept or maintenance compared to having to bring out my weeding knife and make sure I get all the Cynantium root out. Yeah, and it's only a couple times a year that I have to do anything to these perennials. I usually just let them be, but things like the Fragaria that really kind of root itself in, that's one I need to kind of just pull out of like the quince or maybe the amelanchier if it grows getting close to it, but it's super easy to maintain.
Could you mention what the amelanchier is?
What species they are?
Yeah. You know?
Nantuckenensis.
Okay, yep. Virginia creeper, any thoughts on that?
The native one, I'm into it. The non-native one, I would get rid of it and plant the native one. But yeah, I'm a fan of that. Same with like Virginia creeper grows on the wall on Willow Path, and I encourage that because that's going to be the only thing that will compete with like the porcelain berry that's over there or the bittersweet. So yeah, those are great. And there's a native Parthenocissus that is cool. So that will take a little more maintenance if you're growing it up your house or something. So
Okay, great, thank you. Where are the main plants in relationship to these ground covers?
So the main plants would be the rose. So that's actually a miniature rose. This is a moss rose. You have an apple there. The Crimsonrambler is an accession plant. I mean, all these are accession now, but that's an accession plant too. So any roses in here are the main plants. On the other side, there's these Sanguisorba, the native Sanguisorba, kind of filling in this gap. And then so there's the apple, there's the Queen Elizabeth, floribundas. And that's kind of my goal through the whole garden. My other goal too, and we didn't talk about this one, this is Allium cernuum. I read a book when I was younger called Roses Love Garlic. Yeah. And alliums in the garlic family, and that deters voles, which in the past have been killing the climbing roses, and it also deters Japanese beetles. This too, we'll see it around. This was probably, I don't know, 5 plants last year, and now it is 15. Very easy to maintain. If they send out a seed in a spot a seedling in a spot I don't want, I just pull it right out. Very cute nodding pink flower. That's why it's called nodding onion. Yeah, so these are spotted through the rose garden. That's the only thing I use besides Epimedium and hellebore that isn't in the rose family. But yeah, in terms of where the main plants, so when I came here, there was a lot of gaps in between plants that were just filled with mulch that I had 2 options to weed it or use some kind of herbicide. And I thought it would be more efficient and environmentally friendly to use a living mulch. So I invite you to come down. It's easier to come down and see where they are in relationship, but I try to give the main roses at least like around their drip line. So when I'm weeding or maintaining things, in case I do need to come in here and water, I like to have a space around the drip line for the roses.
All right, great. I think we have to wrap that up. because this is a webinar, I do have email addresses for you all. So once I chat with Scott, and when we have a moment, we will pull together some resources for all of you. Scott, can you just say one bit about recommendations for getting plugs?
Yeah. North Creek Nurseries in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Kurt Blumel Nurseries. Prairie Moon is Midwest. And you could get plugs from the Native Plant Trust. You could get plugs from Sunny Borders in Connecticut. And if there's people outside of those areas, you can find my email on the Arnold website under the people section. My email should be there under Scott Phillips, and you can shoot me an email and I will probably know a good nursery by you.
All right, wonderful. I'm just going to say there's a lot of people asking very specific questions about, what plant is great for dry shade and what plant for a steep slope, etc. A lot of those questions can be answered just by using a search engine and typing that in. There's wonderful resources out there. So I am not going to be able to answer all those specific questions through this webinar, but the resources are definitely out there. And if you access some of those nurseries that Scott mentioned and get onto their websites, you can probably, a lot of them often have a almost a spreadsheet of plants appropriate for different situations. So I think that's a great way to go for answering many of your questions. I think that's it, Scott, and thank you so much for doing this. And Steve, thank you for recording, and we will sign off now.
Okay.